Virgil van Dijk. How fitting that this probably be the next one who was actually on my list of players to talk about. Obviously getting the winner for Liverpool against Atletico Madrid last night. Um, what more can we say about this guy? I think I did a video on him talking about, whether or not people believe, he is, probably the best ever centre back in the Premier League history. Um, I understand there's obviously going to be some type of skepticism with that, because ultimately, we've had people like Rio, John Terry. I mean, the list kind of goes on. Tony Adams, Vincent Company, Sol Campbell, Nemanja Vidic. We've had some really, really top centre backs. Centre backs probably one area, alongside maybe a few others, like maybe like striker and that. But in terms of like having like top level world class players in one position, maybe one day I've got to do a show on that in terms of which position has had the most, because centre back has had so many good ones. But I think Virgil van Dijk, like what, like honestly, I don't know what else we can even say about this brother. Like that hasn't already been said. I think I heard Jamie Carragher talk about him after the game last night, and talking about him being a legend. At, I mean, that happened time ago. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what else anybody needed to see in order for them to put him in that legendary status. But yeah, for me, and obviously, I've not supported Liverpool since the 80s, 70s, and all that kind of stuff. But since I've been born in the 90s, yeah, he's way, way beyond anything I probably thought he would have been, first and foremost, in terms of like maybe my expectations and stuff like that. But just in a general sense, I can't think, like all the other centre backs I just spoke about, they're all good. Rio, I thought, was a top quality centre back. John Terry, I think, absolutely immense. Vidic, I thought, was a good centre back. So Campbell, I thought, was absolutely brilliant. I do look at Soul, and like when I look at Soul, Soul kind of reminds me of what Konate would like to be. Do you know what I'm saying, in terms of the level of that kind of play, in terms of being someone of that kind of physical kind of build, and you got the pace, you got the strength, like to be a little bit rash at times, but yeah, he's very, very composed at what he kind of does, and he can obviously pass the football. That's that kind of level. But if I'm saying that, then Virgil van Dijk has to be then better. And the only one I can really think of that I would put him like close to Van Dijk, or I would say, oh, you know what, if you said him, I won't argue, but I can make points against it, would probably be John Terry. Because I think John Terry, for me, is like I said, it's between him and Van Dijk, and at the moment, I'm swaying more to Van Dijk anyway, to be honest with you. But if I look at it as well, I mean, John Terry, and I know everyone likes to say, "Oh, if he was in this era, would he?" I hear all of that, but just in terms of their own errors, when you're talking about, someone like John Terry who wasn't reasonably quick, didn't have the pace of a Virgil van Dijk. I don't think he's got the strength of a Virgil van Dijk. So for him to be that good coming up against some of the players that he's had to come up against, now this is what I say about the errors thing. This is why I don't like always getting bogged down into these kind of error versus error, because like it's like me saying, well, yeah, if I put Messi in, I don't know, let me know when you use Messi. If I put maybe like a Neymar or Bale in, I don't know, in the 60s or the 70s, then yeah, they probably would tear it up or whatever, because they're just supreme athletes in comparison to what they would have been playing against back then. But even if I'm just talking about like John Terry's era, which isn't like yeons ago, but the football was completely different to what we see it now in terms of the tactical element and the tactical aspects behind it. Yeah, I look at John Terry and I just think, can't lie. Do you know what I mean? Someone who didn't have the pace like that, positionally better than any defender I've ever seen, in my personal opinion. And the reason I say that again is because you're not quick, you have to be on point positionally. Like you just have to be, because you're not going to be quick, and you're coming up against the likes of the Didier Drogba's. So it's not coming up against Drogba, to be fair, because he's on his team, but let's say you're coming up against the likes of like a Fernando Torres, I don't know, Samuel Eto'os, and all of the Agueros and all these kind of guys, right? You're coming up against these kind of players who are all quick, some of them reasonably strong, and can get in behind, love a through ball and all that kind of stuff. You need to be positionally on it. Like, you just need to be on it. Now, of course, in today's day and age, teams play a lot of high lines and stuff like that. So obviously Virgil's quick anyway, so he would be able to sort that out regardless of his positioning. And I do think that that is something that he uses quite a lot, knowing that he is relatively quick, quicker than most, to be honest with you, and he's strong. You know, he seems like he's built like an ox. Do you know what I mean? In terms of, no, that's a lie. He doesn't seem like he's built like an ox when I look at him, but if you see him play, it's like he's built like an ox, right? Um, John Terry, excellent passer, scorer of goals and stuff like that. So yeah, like I say, I'm not saying that I'm gonna argue either way. To be honest with you, I can see both points. If someone said to me John Terry, I'd say okay, I hear it. If he says to me Van Dijk, I'd say okay, I hear it. But I'm gonna go with Virgil van Dijk just because I just think he's more complete in terms of his own attributes. Now, forgetting even just the errors, just in terms of his own ability, you know what he can do, some of the things that he's done. I mean, it came what, second in the Ballon d'Or, second in, but like that's crazy. Now, obviously, Cannavaro went and actually won it, so there is something to be said about that. But the fact that he was second, and if you look at the points here, I mean, he's only a few points. What's that? 7 points off of Lionel Messi, right? In terms of going level, and then eight to go ahead, right? He is only, well, I say he's only, I mean, he's about give or take 200 ahead of Cristiano Ronaldo at that time, 300 ahead of the next Liverpool player on the list, who was Sadio Mane at that time, and then obviously Mo Salah, Kylian Mbappe. It's mad. It's just mad. It's just mad, man. And I just think that when we're talking about greatness, yeah, I mean, if he hasn't already, which I think he has, to be fair, he's gonna go down as just the best. Like his defending, that's something at times it can be frustrating because of his lackadaisical kind of nature. I think it must just be a Dutch thing. Big up to all my Dutch brothers and sisters out there. But sometimes I think it must be a Dutch thing because you give off an air of just being quite lazy in terms of your whole demeanor and stuff like that. But one thing, and I think he's spoken about, I can't remember if he's done an interview or something like that, speaking about the way that, he kind of defends and stuff like that, and what he does in certain situations. Now, obviously, no one's perfect, no one's special in terms of who they are as human beings. So everyone's going to make mistakes. So there have been times in, yes, we have seen Virgil van Dijk look like a bit of a, ooh, what's going on here? But 8 times out of, I was going to say 9, but 8, 9 times out of 10, when you see the way he defends, look at the fact that he's looking at his eyes. I rate that so highly because you've got to be real brave. Do you know what I'm saying? You've got to be super brave for you to only look at a player's eyes when they're moving with the ball at the speeds. Now, even you say, like, for example, looking at this, if you guys remember this game, for those who remember, France versus the Netherlands, right? I remember this specific move. And I remember thinking, obviously, didn't really catch it when I was watching the game. It's only when they slowed it down and, we finally, look back on it a few years later. The fact that he looked at it like, bro, I promise you Mbappe was moving at some ridiculous speed, like ridiculous. Anybody else, Mbappe is getting away from them easily. Yeah, in fact, I'll say easily because this is the period of time where Mbappe was a little bit skinnier, was a little bit lighter, and he was bursting through, man, like there was no tomorrow, like a young Michael Owen or a young Thierry Henry type of thing. Young Nicolas Anelka. Like, just think of that kind of pace, if not more than that pace. Do you get what I'm saying? Virgil van Dijk, he just read his eyes. He knew where he was going to go. He knew fully where he's going to go. Same here, with this, and this is probably the most infamous one. They're going to be playing when he retires or when he leaves Liverpool. Yeah, they're going to play this moment over and over and over again. They're going to have to be honest with you, because it was such an iconic moment. 2v1. I mean, it looked like, yep, Spurs go ahead, score. It's going to be one of those things. Liverpool just going to have to regroup, and they were only up against Virgil van Dijk, and they just fluffed their lines. And what's so funny about this situation? I remember watching it, thinking, at the time, like when watching the game live and stuff, I remember just thinking, yeah, this is looking kind of peak. But as Sissoko started getting closer and closer to goal, I just kept thinking, yeah, he's starting to get shook. Like Van Dijk, and this is probably, why people always say this, but Van Dijk has this aura about him that when he gets close to you, when he gets near you, then all of a sudden now you just start, yeah, you just panic. You just kind of, it's just one of those, like, you don't know what to do. It's like hot potato after a while because you just want to get rid of the ball. Yeah, let me give it to Son. Let me go and deal with it, let him go deal with that whole situation himself, kind of thing. And yeah, I just found that, that whole situation funny. But yeah, listen, look, I mean, I could have sat here done bare stats and all that. We don't need to do that for Virgil van Dijk. We actually really don't. I actually don't even care about the stats, to be honest. I think almost every game that Liverpool played this season, give or take, I'm seeing, yeah, he's made the most clearances and he's done this, and he's whatever those stats are that I'm seeing quite a lot of Virgil van Dijk after every Liverpool game this season, 25-26. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. It really, and you know what's crazy? Him, I always say this about Allison, but I have to sometimes say it about him as well. In terms of like when I'm looking at like the positives, I'm like, I sometimes feel sorry for you and Allison because you two, yeah, are like, you especially are like an alien in terms of your ability and what you can do on a football pitch, right? And Liverpool will concede a goal, and I can see the frustrations within you. Like I can see that you're pissed off. I can see you're mad, and I understand because you're sitting there thinking, "Come on, man!" Like, you know what I mean? But it's almost like that whole thing that Thierry Henry, everyone's getting onto Thierry Henry about what he said to Victor Gyökeres, right? About what he should have done in a certain situation, blah blah blah. And then I see a lot of the comments saying, "Oh yeah, but you're Henry though. Like you can't expect everyone to do." Blah, blah, blah. I feel like Van Dijk sometimes he has that. I feel like he sometimes he almost forgets, or I feel like, bro, you forget you're Virgil van Dijk. You can deal with that situation. You can deal with that. You're quick enough to get there. You're strong enough to, muscle off a player. So when another player in your back line, whether it be Trent when he was here, Robbo, Konate, Matip, whoever, you know, you got to remember that they're not you. Do you know what I mean? They can't do what you can do, kind of thing. And even there, how I just named, all of those players, he's had Virgil, he's had, Joe Gomez, when we won the Premier League. He's had Joel Matip when we won the Champions League. He's had Konate last season when we won the Premier. He is the constant denominator. He is the one. He's the one, and he makes whoever plays next to him better. Jarrell Konza next to him, he makes him look better. Everyone's calling him VVQ. Why is that? Because he's kind of in that mold. When he plays next to him, he looks quite good. He looks pretty decent. Blah blah blah. So, yeah, man. Honestly, this video is more just like a big up to Virgil van Dijk, and to ask, if not Virgil van Dijk, who do you think the best ever Premier League defender, centre back? We'll say centre back because I think there are defenders who are equally as good. But if we're just talking about centre back position, who do you think has been the best? If it's not Virgil van Dijk, who is it? Do you have John Terry? Do you have Rio? Do you have Sol Campbell? Tony Adams, for those who are, watched him in his prime and stuff like that? Let me know your thoughts, man. Let me know your thoughts. And also as well, is Virgil van Dijk the best centre back? And yeah, we'll do this. Is Virgil van Dijk the best centre back you've ever seen since you started watching football? We'll ask that. Since you started watching football, so whether you're someone who watched it from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever, is he the best centre back you have ever seen? If I was to say I would say yes, but context would probably say no. Yes, because obviously he came in, he transformed Liverpool completely, and I don't think a centre back has ever really. In fact, I don't think any centre back has ever. I don't think any has ever come into a team and transformed them so like into this kind of meteoric kind of rise and stuff like that. I don't feel like that. Obviously, there's been like we've named all the like 6 centre backs. Vincent Company was a top quality centre back, but I don't feel like him being in the team transformed them at the time when Vincent Company became like a regular starter, and obviously they're starting to win Premier Leagues and stuff. I don't feel like that's because they had Vincent Company. I feel like he was a contributing factor, of course, because when you're a top centre back, you're going to be. But I don't feel like, probably if they didn't have Vincent Company, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like it's like that. Not when you've got Dzekos and the Agueros, and I don't really feel like it was that kind of thing. But I'll be intrigued to kind of really do some research behind that and kind of find out. But yeah, as I say, man, let me know in the comment section as to what you think about Virgil van Dijk. Is he the best you've ever seen? Let me know. Catch you guys soon. Peace.